Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Women Who Win, Celebrating Black Women at ZoomInfo. This is the fourth installment of the Women Who Win series and the first co-hosted by Zoom in Color and the Women's Initiative Network.
Hey everyone, my name is Mishma, but I go by Mish. You may have heard of me so far. I am a customer onboarding manager, so hi to all the colleagues I work with very closely. Thank you for being here. And now is the time that everyone has been waiting for. It is time to start our discussion and questions. And so let's start with the first question. To Alana, what's something you've done that you're really proud of?
Great question. So I think what I've done that I'm really proud of is learning and not to say no, but negotiating my no. That's been really important for me. I feel like it helps me have a good reputation because I'm somebody that you can count on, somebody that can solve problems. And I really work hard to teach my team that too. So don't say no, say what you can deliver, say how you can contribute to a goal or a task at hand. So that's been important for me.
I love that. Don't say no. Okay, Nora, what you got for us?
One of the things I'm most proud of stems from one of my earlier legal experiences in a pro bono case. I worked on a team that represented a death row inmate named Johnny Bennett. Johnny was sentenced to death for killing his friend when he was 19. And our job was to look at his case, everything that's happened to see whether or not there was any grounds to appeal the case. And during our course of our investigation, which included going through court transcripts and meeting with witnesses and jurors, we found two problematic things. We found one, that the prosecutor injected race a lot into his closing arguments. And so he would say things like, Johnny is a large Black man. So he compared him to King Kong and called him a beast of burden and said, if you don't sentence him to death, he will essentially wreak havoc in your community. The other concerning issue is all defendants are entitled to an impartial jury. And one of the jurors, when we asked him, why did you sentence Johnny to death? He said, because Johnny's a dumb N-word and all dumb N-words deserve to die. And he actually used a slur. And then a year later, we went to court and told the judge, hey, this juror was not impartial, he's racist. And the guy testified in court and said, yeah, that's true, I did say that and I believe that. And I wish I didn't say it because it threw a wrinkle in this case. So ultimately we filed an appeal saying that Johnny didn't get a fair trial. And a couple years later, the courts agreed with us and Johnny's no longer on death row.
That's a very powerful story. Thank you, Nora. Now I know if I'm ever in any legal issues. Hi, Nora. Also learned some really great words from my little true crime podcast. But moving forward, Sarah, what do you have for us?
Yeah, one thing I'm really proud of is my current role. It's been a long journey trying to get where I'm at. Just having the privilege of working with, the largest companies and our largest clients just means so much to me. And, I was born in a really rough area of Las Vegas and with limited resources, limited opportunities. And with that, my mom encouraged me to defy the odds, not become a statistic. And with that, I've been able to navigate the corporate space and end up where I'm at today. And it kind of reminds me of a quote, we're living our ancestors' wildest dreams. And to think of the fact that my great-great-grandparents were, still working on plantations and only dreamed to be in the position that I'm at just means so much to me. And like the least that I can do is just give them my all and to be the best.
Thank you. We're happy to have you here. As we continue this discussion, you can always Slack these lovely ladies and give them your kudos or, kudos online as well. And so for our next question is for Crystal, Alana, and Tia. Talk about one of your favorite experiences with ZoomInfo. Let's start with Crystal.
I'll start out. Sorry. Eager beaver over here. So I have a couple. My first is specifically towards benefits. There have been a couple of benefits changes at ZoomInfo that have really affected my family. As a queer Black woman with a trans husband, having trans medical benefits at our company has been huge, knowing that he can get the treatments that he needs, the care that he needs. Literally brings me to tears all the time, but because there's so much that trans individuals have to do in order to get the surgeries they need, the treatments they need, raising money, doing a lot of work that maybe they don't want to do to get those treatments. So the moments that we've had those changes at the company with our benefits have been like huge for me. And then the second is a little bit of bragging with the donation drives that we do every year. One year, I was on a team that won the donation drive, and it was huge to just be a part of a group of people that I knew were like myself, who love giving and doing what we can to help out the community that we live in. That was a huge bonus for me at the company.
Amazing. Thank you, Crystal. Alana?
Sure. I think one of my favorite experiences has been just meeting my manager, Ayelet Rubin, in person. I had been working at the company for about a year, and she lives in Israel, so she had the opportunity to come here. And I was really, happy about that because she's always been my champion, my hero, and I realize I'm grateful for that every day. So I didn't recognize how much I needed that when things get challenging, or that it really sustains me to have that support. I think the other thing I wanted to bring up too is just working with my colleagues. They really sustain me. They're the people that I get up in the morning for to work with. I'm really happy and excited about that. They're kind, smart, intelligent people. And so I really appreciate the people at the organization and my teams.
If you work with Alana, just gave you a really, really big shout out. Look at that. Okay. Natia?
It's great to hear everybody's responses. And I must say that my favorite experience at ZoomInfo have been around the community I've been able to build with Black leaders, like the ones that are on this call. I honestly wake up every morning, I'm going to gush over Mish a little bit. I'm just so grateful for all that she does to graciously use her time to bring us together so we can celebrate our successes, both in ZoomInfo and outside in Zoom in Color. So thank you, Mish. I'm also grateful to have had the opportunity to be accepted into the McKinsey Black Management Accelerator, where I've been able to meet folks like Mel Wilson, who's our group's coordinator, and also Sarah King is in my group. So it's great to see her here as well, and Mark Lockett. And together we're learning the skills that we need to continue advancing in our careers. These experiences for me are completely invaluable because I grew up in a pretty segregated part of my town. And so working in a predominantly white space is a bit of a culture shock. So having a space where I can let my guard down a bit and talk about things like the movies that I grew up with, or the music I listened to, or the churches I went to, or the food that I ate, all of those signal to me that I do belong here, that tech is for me and for us too.
Okay, let's go. Tech is for everyone and you deserve to be here. Okay. Next question is there anything you wish you knew before entering tech? Alana?
Sure. I think what I would say is that I wish I'd known that it was going to be lonely and it was challenging and that I was going to be told no more often than yes. And that I would have to learn to listen more than I would need to speak as a Black female. And so I wasn't going to find a mentor that resembled me, but I feel like I found great women, great minorities, people that were smart, and started working on building that network for myself. But I also then decided to be that support system for other people. And I feel like that's what I feel like I wish I'd known before, that I wasn't going to have a predefined group of people like myself, and that I would have to learn some things and like build that network.
Awesome, thank you. And for the audience, if you have not already connected with people on LinkedIn, go ahead and add them on LinkedIn, keep the connection going. But Tia, you spoke about tech earlier. So what's something you knew before entering tech?
Yeah, so thank you for sharing that answer, Alana. I definitely resonate with that. And there was a great conversation that was similar to that in the Black Leadership Academy about finding mentors and the challenges of that as a person of color in tech. And something that I wish that I would have known before entering tech is that it's not about what you know, it's about who you know. I think I took a lot of time trying to keep my nose pressed in the books and read tons of HBR articles because I thought maybe that's how I would advance in my career. But then I found out that no one actually likes a walking human encyclopedia, right? People want to work with a human. And so now I still read lots of books about management, project management, sales techniques. I read all the time. but I also focused an equal amount of energy on just building great relationships and having cool hobbies outside of work too. But I love building genuine, non-transactional relationships. And I've made so many successful career jumps by just asking people about themselves first, their families, their pets, everything before we get into the work. Because I'm genuinely interested and I follow up on those things as well. And so I guess I'll add to that first statement. It's not about what you know, it's about who you know. That I wish I would have known that it's not about the breadth of relationships that you have when you're networking. It's about the depth. The depth of those relationships is really what pushes your career forward.
I love that. Thank you, ladies, so much. In terms of the whole pets, if you've been at the company for a while, you know you have a lot of dog and cat people. And so there's a lot to relate to while you're working here. Awesome. So next question is for Monique. What's something you wish people knew about you?
So I'm sort of going to add a twist to my answer here. Though I can say all of our experiences are different, I can also say without hesitation that everyone on this beautiful panel has had or knows someone that's experienced similar situations. So my family grew up in poverty in Kingston, Jamaica, and they came to America with nothing. And my grandma worked as a housekeeper and a nanny to bring her kids over one by one throughout like over 10, 15 years. And then she brought their husbands over. So needless to say, we didn't have generational wealth or even like basic wealth. But fast forward to today where my parents, they own investment properties. They retired at 60. They've raised a doctor, a lawyer, and little old me. And they still get questioned for existing in certain spaces. They'll go to banks and they get questioned as to how they can take out so much money. They had to fire the guy who did their taxes 2 years ago because he was questioning how they got where they were and had what they had. And that's all just because of the color of their skin. And I just want people to remember that even though we can be highly esteemed, professional, well-off, hardworking, there's going to be someone questioning our abilities and hard work in the background. And even, for example, Ryan Coogler, he made the 9th highest grossing film of all time. Some of you might have heard of it. He was arrested a few weeks ago just for trying to take money out of the bank. So that's just something that I want people to remember. We can work hard, we can, dress nice, and we'll still be questioned and oppressed.
For sharing, Monique. And I want to add that if there's a door that's not open for you, go ahead and open it for yourself, right? There's always so many closed doors out there, but you can definitely make the way. It's gonna take a little bit of, elbow grease, but you got this. Awesome, thank you, Monique. Next question is for Crystal. What's a challenge you faced in your career and how did you get through it?
That's a really great question. It's a hard question, right? Because it's like we come to work, we do our job, and we hope that it's rewarding. A few years ago, I was having quite a bit of anxiety and depression. And typically a job well done is something that really gets me through my day. Like I really strive to feel complete through work. And at that time, that wasn't doing it for me anymore. It was adding a bit of anxiety a little bit to my anxiety and depression that was already happening. And so I had to make a choice of, do I keep doing this thing that used to bring me a lot of joy, or do I try to do something new that I might be horrible at, that I might be way worse off with, that might add way more to my anxiety and depression. And I ended up choosing to move on to a different team in research, and I ended up being really joyful. I made a big goal to focus on my professional development, to make sure that I was getting where I wanted to be, to focus in on what it was that I wanted from my life. And I'm really grateful that I did that. Really grateful to all the people that have helped me along the way. Because now I'm in a place where I love my job, and I'm back to where my job is adding to my joy.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being so open and honest about what you're facing, like behind like what you show. We do have another Slack channel called ZI Wellness that talks about how to do self-care and be like whole and well while you're at this company. So if you haven't joined that, that's another Slack channel to join. So thank you, Crystal. Okay, our next question is, what has been the hardest part about your current role? Alana, take it off.
Sure. I think the hardest part for me is pushing it back against something that I'm designing that doesn't make sense. So there's always, there are often a little bit of conflict in working with people that might want a specific thing done or specific design. And so what I do is try to articulate that maybe I don't agree with what their solution is. Sometimes I don't have another solution or a way to solve it, but I want to really articulate why it might not work. And so sometimes I have to settle for saying, this doesn't work and this is the reason why it doesn't work, and actually end up doing a design that I disagree with. That's a very hard challenge for me to reconcile that, because very frequently I might have to stand up and explain it to some more senior leaders, like, why did we do this? This is the reason why we did that. So I try to collect as much information as I can. And I also just try to make sure that I settle with the person that I'm doing it for to articulate why it might not work. And then I think I have to just live with that solution at that time. I think that's probably the biggest, most challenging thing to me is I can't always do the best design. There may be other factors as to why I can't do it, and I have to just be all right with that.
Thank you, Alana. I'm sure a lot of us can relate to having to say our why and like why it's important as well. So thank you. Nora, what do you have for us?
Sure. So, one of the biggest challenges of my role is that I have to balance what is legally right with what makes most sense for business, especially in a heightened scenario where either someone's being threatened with a lawsuit by us or they're threatening us with a lawsuit. And so oftentimes I'm getting on phone calls with people who are ready to fight back with me. And my job is to tell them how we're right, but also convince them to do what is best for the business in a way that's cost efficient. Lawsuits are expensive and they take a lot of time, and there's a risk you may not win. And so my job is really to try to resolve things in the most efficient way possible. I would say 99% of the time when I'm talking to a lawyer that on the other side, it is a fight. But what's most rewarding about it is when I eventually get them to come to our side. I must say I do have a decent success rate at that. The icing on the cake, especially, is on times when there's been a particularly difficult conversation or series of conversations with someone on the other side, get them to agree to what I want, and then they offer me a job, which I think is hilarious. So that's most challenging, but it's also a part of why I love my job.
Yes, for the success rate. Oh, friend, I know her. I know Nora. Okay, awesome. Sarah?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like, like the day-to-day tasks and responsibilities of training come quite natural to me. But I think the hardest part about my role is moving up the ladder, when it comes to finding new opportunities and moving up, as well as, if we're having honest and true reflection here, is, getting pay raises as well. I think that can also be quite hard. But with that, that's also a motivating factor for me. And I want to, prove people wrong, and as well as give it my best and give it my all. And so it is hard, but again, it's what inspires me as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. And we have Alana for those no negotiations as well. So we have some women here who can kind of help us out while we navigate moving up, moving across, all that thing. For our audience, if you do want to ask any questions, we do have our Q&A button at the bottom of our Zoom. And so you can definitely submit some questions for us to ask later on. Okay, next question is, if you struggled with imposter syndrome, how did you overcome it? Crystal, let's start with you.
So I have a lot of imposter syndrome in two areas of my life, one around my Blackness and one around my queerness, right? So I was raised by two awesome but white parents. I was adopted and I live in a very white conservative community. And so those are my struggles with imposter syndrome. There's plenty more, as imposter syndrome proves. And the way that I combat that or kind of deal with that is, one, recognizing and understanding that we all have different lived experiences. Like I might not have a family history to look back on to have a better understanding of Black culture and queer culture and those things. But I have the ability to educate myself. I have the ability to read things, to communicate with people from my communities, to learn the things that I've missed out on being raised in a community that is not aligned with who I am. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Imposter syndrome is really, really tough. I know me and Tia are like somewhat new in 4 months in, and we had discussions about how that can really impact how we show up in spaces. So thank you so much, Crystal. Nora, what do you have to add?
I've dealt with imposter syndrome a lot. You know, in the legal field, it's not particularly diverse. 5% of lawyers in the country are Black, 2% are Black women. And in my time being a lawyer, I've never had a Black woman as opposing counsel on a case. I've never had a Black judge. And so I'm always in a room with people who don't look like me. And frequently I'm in the room with people who are been practicing for significantly longer and are white men. And so, you know, what I've started to focus on, instead of thinking, oh, I'm the only person like me in this room, I think, wow, I am the only person like me in this room, you know? And I think about the experiences that have allowed me to be in this space at the time that I'm, you know, at this time. You know, my first deposition was against a guy who had been a former federal prosecutor, had been a lawyer longer than I'd been alive. And he thought that I was a paralegal when I walked into the room first. And I'd say, no, I'm the person taking the deposition. But instead of thinking, oh, you know, like freaking out and caving in, I thought, oh, wow, he is going to underestimate me. So my job here is to prove to him why I'm here. And I would encourage everybody who does deal with imposter syndrome to think there's a reason why you're in this space at this time. And just because someone's been there for 30 years doesn't mean they know the best way to handle something. There may be something about your experience that allows you to look at something in a unique way, and that's what makes you valuable. And if you weren't meant to be in the room, you wouldn't be there. And so that's how I deal with imposter syndrome.
Hallelujah, amen. Oh my God, okay, love that so much. Sarah, Nora, really? We have Sarah coming up right next. Sarah, what do you got for us?
Well, you know, what's interesting is that, you know, my answer kind of piggybacks with Nora. And I feel like a lot of my imposter syndrome does stem with the lack of representation, and especially in the tech space. It's very rare that you'll see a Black woman holding high positions, decision-making positions, let alone Black people in general. And with that, it just kind of, sometimes I get in my head where it's like, oh, do I belong here? What am I striving for? And it's not because, you know, Black people are less talented or gifted as our peers. It's just, you know, we may be giving less opportunities. But how I overcome it is just working twice as hard. You know, I think just hard work and work ethic and just letting my work speak for itself really goes a long way. And so that's how I handle imposter syndrome.
You know what's funny, Sarah? That quote reminds me of Scandal, Olivia Pope's dad, who was like, you have to work twice as hard to get half of what they got.
Right.
I love Shonda Rhimes, so like, that's why. So thank you so much. Okay, next question is, what is the best career advice you have ever received? Or what practical advice would you give to a woman who is just starting off in this field? So Crystal, you have two questions.
I'm going to go with best advice, and it was from Katie Bullard. We had a WIN group happy hour, and she came and talked with us. And one of the best pieces of advice she ever gave was not to be the expert in your area, to make sure that you and your team know the same things, compliance and everything in mind, but to make sure that you aren't the only one that knows what you know, so that your team can succeed, and so that you aren't the only person that can do the things you can do, so that you can move on, right? You want to make sure that your team can grow and be smart, but also so that you aren't stuck in the same position because you're the only person that knows how to do what you know how to do. And that was the best advice I ever got.
I love that. I love the concept of like lifting as we climb. So like as you're going up the ladder, bring someone with you, along with you, because you're not the only one. So thank you, Crystal. Okay, Monique, which one do you choose to answer?
I'm going to choose the best advice I've received. And it was received in a combination from a few different people. But essentially it's be confident in yourself. Don't be afraid to ask questions. You're not less intelligent because you have questions that need to be asked, and have confidence in your perspective when you're, questioning things or trying to provide a different outlook. Getting our job was not a fluke. We are valuable and our perspective is valuable, and our ideas might only be different because we've lived a different life or we've taken a different path in life. So just being bold and confident in your voice because it is valuable.
Monique, I feel like everyone here has had experience of like thinking they don't deserve to be here when like we do. We make our own seat at the table. So amazing. Thank you. Tia, which question did you choose?
Yeah, I'm definitely following the trend here. So this is the best advice that I've ever received. So I'll give a quick story first. So a few years into my career, I went from opera singer, is super random, into a mortgage loan officer. You can ask me about it some other time. And I was a loan officer at a nationwide bank, and I was recognized for top sales across the company. And my third month closed 3 million in loan volume. So that is huge, right? And after doing that and being successful for 2 years, I decided to leave and join a nonprofit. My grandmother thought I had lost my mind, and maybe I had. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I took a huge pay cut to take that job. But as Rihanna says, and my partner says it all the time, never a failure, always a lesson. And I needed to learn a lesson. And I got it from the spiritual leader who was facilitating a conversation randomly at a library about how to handle the weight of racism in the workplace. And I told her after she finished how much I was struggling to find my place in work, both in corporate and in the nonprofit sector. And she put her hands on my shoulders, looked me in the eye, the way only an elder in the community can. And she told me something that I will never forget. She said, stay where you are, find peace where you are. I will never forget that moment. And I carry it with me everywhere that I go. And now I understand it to mean go into every single space that you knock the door down into unapologetically as yourself. People may not like you. There are definitely going to be people that don't like you everywhere you go, but you have to find peace regardless of the situation. And I've realized that if I am brave enough and courageous enough to find that peace, that I also find people like all of the amazing women here who are willing and are fighting to find that same peace too. And then we can lift each other up as we continue to climb the ladder to success.
Period. You have some folks crying in the chat, just so you know, you made people cry. But also, hold up, opera singer? Did I hear that correctly?
Yeah,
I know you're lying.
that's so correct.
It's
a whole thing.
Okay? Oh, great, because, okay, great. Okay, next question is, have you had an experience with a customer or a colleague where you felt your identities were being challenged? Monique.
Yes, I've had quite a few. One that I also feel like we've all experienced on this panel was my hair changes quite often. And a few years back, not at ZoomInfo, luckily, I had a colleague that would consistently comment on it. And in the summer, I'll always have braids or twists in my hair. But in the fall, I came back with just my hair straight. My natural hair just straight out. And he said, I really like your hair straight. And don't get me wrong, I like your dreads, but your straight hair just looks a lot better on you. And, at that point you want to say things, but you can't. So all I could do is say thank you and go on with my day. But yeah, that happens quite often where we face those microaggressions and they think it's a compliment, but it's not. And you kind of just have to brush it off.
As you can see, our panelists have some very strong facial expressions because I'm sure we've all been through that. I know if you're on LinkedIn, people are coming out with their natural hair on like headshots. And so we really are evolving the way we show up as our true selves. And so we definitely have experience with our hair and how we show up. So thank you, Monique. Okay, Shara, how about you?
That's such a tough act to follow. But yeah, I think that, setting the stage, one thing about me is my name is Shara Davis. A lot of people, it's very ambiguous if you can't figure out who I am or what I look like just based on my name. And coming as a first generation, the only accent I have is a New York accent. So, very strong education background, very high vocabulary, just because, if you have a parent from another country, you know how we push education. And so oftentimes I get in situations where I might have interacted with the person on the phone, I've interacted with them on email, but they had no clue who to expect when they physically interacted with me. And then similar to what Nora was mentioning is like, I'll show up in spaces and they ask for the professional. And it's like, that's me, like the same person you've been speaking to this entire time. And so it's always difficult because with microaggressions, a lot of times things that are systematically racist, people don't understand, like it's subconscious sometimes. Like there's times where people say things innocently and they're not intending to be harmful or hurtful, but it is. And so when you enter those situations, like Monique mentioned, you try to say thank you if it's awkward compliments, similar to the Venus and Serena thing that happened this weekend, if anyone has seen that commentary. But then you also end up in the situation where in that split second, you need to decide what's more important. And you have to make a decision against like, do I assert my identity in this moment? Or do I like let that go to make the like transaction or the experience be successful? And it's a constant struggle. And after the fact, you're always questioning like, did I handle that correctly? Because it's yourself against the business.
Awesome, thank you so much. I love that you're first generation because girl, me too. But also, we have a follow-up question about that, the whole hair situation. If someone says, is it better to say to a colleague, I like you with your long straight hair better? Will that be better for you, Monique? I know for me, it's all about intent versus impact. Just say you like my hair, because I wear a wig every week, that's different, Don't say that I like you better with your long hair, because it's like, well, is my natural hair not beautiful too? But that's my opinion, but Monique.
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's the intention behind it. I won't even go into the other things that that specific person said to me throughout my career, but I do have people compliment on my hair quite often, even at ZoomInfo, but I know their intentions are, oh, your hair looks nice today. You curled it. It looks, pretty. But rather than, I prefer that over braids, twists, dreads, your natural hair, coming into the office that way. So I definitely agree, Mitch, with the intention behind it. You can generally tell if you want to go and elaborate and explain to that person why. What I had last week was not dreadlocks. Those were twists. And here's the difference between them. So that's my answer.
I also want to say, if for anyone, not saying that you've done this, but don't ever touch someone's hair without permission first, because I know it has happened to me and to a colleague. And so like, I know it looks nice, just, contain yourself. Okay, moving on. How do you balance work and life? Let's start off with you, Alana.
Sure, this is a great question for me, actually. I feel like I struggle with this daily, to be honest with you. And I very frequently tell my team not to follow what I do, which is really bad. I feel like I'm not the example of what you should do because I will be in bed looking at my Slack, responding to messages, accepting meeting invites, at 4 a.m. I'm fine, do that. But what I have to really reconcile with myself is there are days when I don't feel like I'm getting things done. And I have to know that it's okay for me to have participated in meetings that whole day. And that is actually work. And that is actually okay, that I've met with people. I've solved some problems. We've worked out a path forward for something that we need to do. And it's okay that I didn't get the things that I need to get done. So I feel like that is really something I've been trying to learn and kind of settle in, is that like my participation, my problem solving, my collaboration is work, and that I don't actually have to always get that one thing done. But I struggle with this every day. It's not good for me, and I'm still trying to find the right balance for it.
Thank you. Monique?
Totally agree with Alana. I struggle with this as well. But this actually coincides with really great advice I received a few weeks ago from a friend. I'm not a doctor, so if I don't answer an email at 10 p.m., no one's going to die. And I try to now remember that if I'm scrolling my emails before bed for some odd reason, and I see an email that I know I can answer, but I'll need to go to my computer to like figure it out. I know if I answer it the next morning when I get to my computer, everything will be fine. And I think there's sometimes a pressure on us to, as Sarah said, just like be better, be our best, and work 10 times harder than everyone else. But I really just I'm trying to make an effort recently to be more intentional with the time that I'm spending away from my computer and away from work, to do the things that make me happy and focus on those things that are making me happy, to remove the email that I didn't answer, even though I know I could have answered it from the back of my mind. So that's how I am balancing work and life right now.
Thank you. I love how you connected it with Sarah's point earlier. I think as Black women, we tend to like work twice as hard, just like try to gain that next pay raise when it's like, you know what, it's after hours. I'm not getting paid for this. It can wait till tomorrow because no one's dying, right? Awesome. Thank you. Shara?
Yeah, I think I don't know anyone, particularly any woman, period, who doesn't struggle with this. But I'm very big about routines and boundaries where I can. So one, I try to have like a morning routine. I try to have a night routine to have some kind of like sleep hygiene. The other thing is like, I do work really hard. Like I believe in flexibility within consistency. So I show up and try to be as consistent as possible so that when I do need to take a break, I feel okay with that. And I attach my work to my computer. So, I'm very much like, I will be here, even if I pull a 10-hour day, and I'm not going to lie and say I've never done it, but like once that computer shuts, it's done. Like I'm not checking an email on my phone. I'm not responding to Slack on my phone. Like I'm very much like the workday is over, and anything that happens now, we're going to address that tomorrow. And I think the last thing is also just being lucky enough to have a good manager who can also say like, hey, you need to take the day off. Like, even when I'm just like, no, I'm going to keep pushing through. It's like, no, I understand. I wanted that that you're valued. We appreciate you, and you need to take a day. And so having space where you have support around you to remind you like it's okay to have that break is also really helpful.
Shout out to our managers who like tell us to log off when it's like past our time. Also, Shara, you are like the TikTok it girl. Okay, morning and night routine, and love to see it. Okay, awesome. Next question is, how do you combat biases in the tech industry? Monique?
I would say doing things like this. So tech companies should have empathy for underrepresented minorities who don't feel a sense of belonging. And I think having panels like this, especially in the middle of the day, not at 7 p.m. at night, are going to be really helpful, because we'll all win when we're honest and open and at a state of mutual empathy, and everyone feels like they belong. So just participating in whatever I can.
Thank you. Tia?
Yeah, I love that answer, Monique. And Shara, you touched on a lot of what I was going to share about this question. Regardless of what industry I'm in, and I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of head nods here, I feel like, and I've talked about this with some of you, Mish, my unpaid part-time job involves educating people about their unconscious bias. So for example, and a lot of folks have mentioned this already, many people assume that I don't know what I'm doing because their unconscious bias tells them I don't look the part, right? It used to make me angry, but now I lean into the advice of another amazing Black woman mentor of mine, who said that she disrupts systems by asking questions. So now when I'm in situations where someone is clearly operating from a space of bias, and you know it when it's happening, trust me, I try not to get into my feelings, although sometimes I do, because I am human and I acknowledge and allow that space for that as well. But when I am, on my toes, I pause and I take a breath and first affirm how that person is feeling and what they said. and I ask for clarification. I repeat it back and I say, hey, I heard you say this. Did I hear you correctly? And allow them to clarify. And I keep asking questions like the 5 whys essentially until we get to the root of the problem. And 9 times out of 10, after we go through all of those whys, we find out that the root has nothing to do with me. And it's often followed up with an apology and a thanks for helping them, right? Or as Nora said, an offer for a job at a different company. Dealing with bias, though, while I can joke about it, is hard. And it can definitely weigh on you. I often quote Alexander Toussaint, who says death by 1,000 cuts, which is what microaggressions feels like. Which is why it's so important, as other people here have said, to surround yourself with people that understand your identity, how it impacts the way that you show up in the world, and that never make sure that inner corner and circle, whether they be in ZoomInfo or outside, they never let you accept failure or defeat as the answer. We can do anything. And Zoom in Color has definitely been that great support for me here.
Thank you, Tia. And if at any point, Tia, you want to be a therapist, can you be like my therapist, please and thank you? Just want to put that in there. Awesome. Next question is, if you could give advice to a Black woman starting in tech, what would it be? Sarah?
Oh, yes. Some advice I would give is pretty simple. Just be your authentic self, hair and all. And I think that's just really important because I feel like a good chunk of my career, I felt like I'm maybe downplayed. Maybe my personality, just being worried about being perceived a certain way. But the reality is the Black women provide lots of good ideas, talents, and gifts that just benefits the business overall. So be loud, be authentic, and that's my advice.
Yeah, we do offer some wonderful gifts. We're here, we shine. We are the gift as well, period. Okay, Shar.
Taking after good notes, because that was my first one, was to show up as comfortably but professionally authentic as possible. I think that, so often we're so worried about fitting in, or especially like culture fit, that we'll change our, how we look, or we, downplay certain jokes. And it's like, ultimately, yes, that might get you in the door, but like, if that's the environment, if you have to fake to be something else to enter that environment, you're going to ultimately end up uncomfortable anyway, because you can only fake it for so long. So if you show up as yourself from the interview process through hiring and onboarding, then you know that they're accepting you as you because they met you. They didn't meet like the representative that's just trying to get this job. I also think it's important because a lot of biases come from people never having experienced, someone like you. So they're assuming based on like whether it's television or every other person they met, this is what Black women act like. And so when you show up as yourself, they'll begin to understand like we're not a monolith and like there's so much variety. But if they don't see variety, they won't know themselves. Another thing for me is have mentors of all colors. I think that and genders as well. I think it's really important to find safe spaces where you can just be, like we need that. So similar to what Tia was mentioning before, having areas of conversation where you can talk about your music or your experiences, but you also don't know what you don't know. And so there's some things that only someone who's had a different experience can shed light on for you. And if you don't have relationships, whether it's mentor or just comfortable relationships with someone where you can go and ask those questions. Like you want to be able to go and say like, how much did you get offered for this? Like, what did you do in this experience? And you need someone else to be able to tell you like, this is what it should look like so that you know like what's the norm. And then my last one is acknowledge the fact that you are going to be oftentimes the only, if not one of the few. And it comes with a benefit and a curse. It's definitely like, sometimes you feel that ownership to say like, okay, I have to show up correctly because, like based on how they experience me is what they're going to think of other Black women. But at the same time, there's a benefit because you automatically stand out. Like everyone is already going to pay attention to you, even if they're not trying, because just physically you look different. They're like, oh, who's this other face? And so you have to like the blessing and the curse of being odd. But so I do think it's a privilege as well as, sometimes a setback, as long as you can identify how to leverage that.
I love that so much. And to go to your point, Shara, if you allow disrespect, they will keep disrespecting. This goes for anyone, anywhere. Like once you stand up as yourself, like Sarah says, be your true self and not allow other stuff to happen, people will respect you as you are. And also, along with Shara's point, know your worth. When it comes to negotiating like the price for when you upgrade or whatever, Know how much it is for other jobs and know how much they're offering you, and then add tax, because people will try to lowball you because they think you deserve that much when you deserve a lot more. Which leads us to our Q&A question time. So panelists, feel free to answer any of these you think you want to answer or know how to answer. And so let's start off with question number 1. What stands out to you about ZoomInfo's culture as compared to other companies you have worked for?
I'll answer that, I think. I would say opportunity. I feel like it's almost like ZoomInfo operates a little bit like a startup. I've had people on my team that have found opportunities that exist that nobody's filling, right? And it's such a great culture to support that. Like, I feel like if you find a need somewhere and you fill that need, then you could potentially be offered that position, that job. Like, being able to show the value of that is amazing to me. And I really, of all the places that I've worked, haven't seen that anywhere, that people just embrace, you know, what you would like to do as you're finding your way and navigating your path in ZoomInfo. And so that is such a great culture to have that.
I'm adding on to Alana. I think one of the things that's remarkable about the company is how easy it is to communicate suggestions, particularly when it comes to issues related to diversity. And so the Shark Tank competition last summer, I thought was a really great opportunity to share some thoughts I had on how to improve in terms of diversity. I think I submitted like 7 ideas. I just was like, these are all things you can do. And I got feedback and was a semifinalist from that. So I think it's nice to have that proximity to leadership when you're sharing your thoughts about how the company could improve. I've worked in law firms predominantly before this that are really stuffy, and you have to go through so many levels of bureaucracy to get someone to maybe look at your idea. So I appreciate that the leaders of the company do take the time to look at our ideas.
I wanted to add to that and say that it's also like acknowledging my Blackness. I've worked in tech before, and a lot of times it's just like, we don't see color. And that's actually also very harmful, because if you don't see my color, you're also not seeing my full experience. And I appreciate being able to be in conversations where we can talk about whatever the diversity is. So my manager posts a lot of like get to know you questions. And, you know, it's always funny when someone talks about like a music thing, and I'm like, I have no clue what that is. Like, I'm from the Caribbean, you know, or being able to like post a meme and like everyone gets it. So it's just one of those things of like, I don't feel like I'm hiding my Blackness as a part of my work. I'm able to be Shara, who is also a Black woman.
I'm on Caribbean woman. I'm Haitian, so like, I love that we're out here as well. Okay, next question is, in what areas do you think ZoomInfo can grow and be better at when it comes to women of color being recognized and valued in this workplace?
I would say to be able to have conversations like this outside of Black History Month or Women's History Month, I think we can continue to amplify voices across the company, but not just wait until a specific Heritage Month to talk to like those, that demographic.
I want to add to that. I know me and a colleague who will not be named because I'm not sure if they want to be named. We spoke about how we should keep hiring, retaining, and promoting women of color in the company, especially like in the executive level. And so that's something I would like to see as we continue growing and thriving as a company, to be able to say, hey, you know, we have someone to like look up to and talk to and network with as well. Anyone else want to answer that question?
Yeah, I just want to add quickly that I think that not only just for Black women, but for all different identities, it's really important to have implicit bias training, because it's unconscious. We don't realize that we're doing it. Like if you've ever taken the Harvard implicit bias test, I do DEI facilitation sometimes, and I incorporate that into my trainings with my partner, who also is a DEI trainer anyway. But when we do that, there are sometimes Black folks will be biased against themselves because we have been taught to do that. So it's not just for, to support Black women, it's really to support everyone, because we don't realize the things that we have digested and accepted as truth that really aren't.
Amazing. I know we have.
I was going to add one more thing to that. Sure. I think that what they could also do too is during the onboarding process, when we hire people, to mention some of these other groups, as people might want to join and just be aware that we have all of these, programs, these other groups that are support the culture and community. It would be great as we onboard people, we mention those or have somebody from that group come and speak to welcome that person in, because I think you never know who might want to join and support other organizations. And I think here we kind of find out about it after you've joined and like try to reach out and try to, get to become a part of it. But just mentioning it during onboarding, I think would be really great to say, hey, we have these communities of things that you could join and participate in would be wonderful.
We have a few minutes left, and so there's a few questions that talk about how can we be better allies, or what do you recommend as books and whatnot. We have ZoomInfo that gives a lot of books about how to unconscious biases, and there's other free online things you can read and whatnot. I want to say that we are not here to teach you. We don't get paid for that. There's a lot of free resources, and also your friends, if so willing, they can also help you in that realm. But does anyone else here in the panel have any thoughts about that?
I also think come with your own research. Of course, it's never good to just be like, I know nothing, so tell me everything. But it's different because I saw the one where there was somebody said, how as a man can I be more supportive? It's kind of like you can show up and be like, hey, this is what I've been doing. I've been trying, but I'm trying to do better. Like, how can I help? And also understanding when to leverage your own privilege. So there's times where like that male privilege is, helpful. And when you have an opportunity of privilege, amplify another voice. So if someone shuts down or dismisses another person, in this case, we're talking about Black women, you could take that moment to be like, you know what, I really want to hear what Shara had to say.
Awesome. I'm going to stop the questions here because I know we have an ending towards this panelist. So thank you so much, ladies, for being amazing panelists. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I know we have our ending PowerPoint slides, and so I'll turn that over.
Hi, everyone. I just want to thank you all for joining, all of the attendees. Thank you for joining. Panelists, that was amazing. There were tears, there were chills, there was laughter. I thank you all for sharing parts of yourself and bringing your authentic self to this event and to the workplace every day. For those of you who felt truly inspired and want to get more involved with Zoom in Color or with the Women's Initiative Network, don't hesitate to reach out. You have those Slack channels. There's also a Women's History event that is happening next week. So be on the lookout for more information on that. Be sure to reach out to any of the panelists or our lovely moderator, Mish, or myself for any questions that you have outstanding. We're available via Slack, email, you know where to find us. Our names are on the screen. But thank you all so much for joining, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.